Started. Good evening, everyone. This is Ron. It is Monday evening, a little after 6 p.m., and we'll go ahead and get started with our session. And we will start with questions and or comments on anything.
Okay, I have a question. Well, I have two. The first one
Okay.
is, the Chinese do a ritual or they way of, I guess, meditating. I call it meditating.
hmm
They take the look like little bells or little symbols or something, and some of them hold them over and they kind of not ring them, but make them shake. I saw this lady doing this, and she was shaking over her head, and she said that it wards off negative energy. So, what is the difference between doing the little uh, symbols or the little bells versus the way we meditate? Or is there is there a difference?
It's
Um,
cultural.
What?
It's culture. It's cultural based because as long as I have been studying the Palestinians and how Jesus meditated and how others did the same, I found nothing that implied that they used certain objects to focus on in order to meditate or to ward off evil spirits, or evil energy or dark energy, however you want. Negative energy is what you said. So it's more for focus or more based on culture than anything else. There are people who meditate with beads. There are those who meditate humming. So there are different methods of meditation, but the main thing is purpose and focus. Okay.
Okay. And my other one is Psalms, the 8th chapter, verses number 1.
Eighth chapter of what, Kathy?
A Psalm,
Oh, eighth chapter of Psalms. Okay.
verse number 1. And it says, O Lord, our Lord, how excellent is thy name in all the earth, who has set thou glory above the heavens. What is the glory above the heavens?
That's more in translation than anything else. Let me look at it from the Hebraic translation. Okay.
Okay, I looked
That,
up,
wait a minute. That's Psalm 8 and what? 8 and 1, right?
right,
Word glory in that case speaks to um, the idea of splendor. It is describing the it's describing Yahweh as you would describe a king. It's talking about how powerful, how majestic that the character of Yahweh is, because name denotes character in the Hebrew. And it's talking about in all of the earth, all the earth that we are bound by. What it's simply saying is that David is saying, Yahweh, our Yahweh, how excellent or how glorious is thy name in the earth, who has set thy majesty above the heavens. When David, in this case, is speaking of the heavens, he is talking about the sky itself, as opposed to the Shamayim that we speak about. The sky itself is the earthly heavens. As we talk about heavenly bodies being the sun, the moon, and the stars, that's what David is referencing, the heavens in that regard, because he confines it to the material world, and he knows the character, Elohim's character in regards to the other world, the world of spirituality. But he's talking about the majesty, the excellence, and the perfection, the beauty of his character in this earth realm. Does that make sense to you? Or to you, to all of you?
Yeah, to me, I don't know about nobody else.
It does, yeah. I was just looking up something, but yeah, it does.
Okay, I'm done.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy. Is there anyone else? Any other questions? Okay. Let's tonight want to look at something that we really something we started Saturday when we looked at Matthew 5. We were looking at verses 1 and 2, and we were taking a close look at Jesus and pulling some things together. As so when he goes up on the mountain, that sort of got our attention. And looking at all the people he drew, and this whole thing started off looking at what it means to assemble yourself. So that was part of the discussion as well. And we got into talking about Jesus and his mountain experiences. And the fact is that we have been taught or led to believe anyway that these experiences were never challenging to him. He went up there to either recoup or talk to God or to pray, but it was never anything challenging to him. And Pastor went back in detail, talked about that even Jesus had to face some trials and temptations. So no one has dared up and look at this truthfully and seen that Jesus too had to go through his own struggles. And we've talked about that as far as we are concerned, being Elohim and being the human, and that vacillating that can take place if you are not rooted. So that is the importance of assembling self. That is the importance of some of our previous lessons, including being yoking. What is being equally yoked? In other words, making sure that you subdue the ego and that mindful part of you. So as we walk through all that and look at this, we see that Jesus also traveled the very same journey that man travels. So when we looked at that from Matthew chapter 4, when he starts his ministry, one of the things that got my attention was to look at that from the perspective of him going almost preparing to go to the cross, and he goes to have his Passover dinner with the disciples before he goes to the garden. So one of the chapters that I looked at with this was Matthew 26, and gives talks about its struggle. And the verse that really I wanted to talk about was, I'm looking at 37 and 38, and it said that he took with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee and began to be grieved and distressed. And this is Jesus talking about. And it said, and he said to them, my soul is deeply grieved to the point of death. Remain here and keep watch with me. So, and in looking at that, there's a lot being said there. But how does he get there? So you almost cannot go into these verses without taking a look at the Passover. So I wanted to look at the Lord's Supper, which starts in verse 26. But I gave some thought to this, and what I'll do is go back and look at Exodus chapter 12. You guys don't have to flip here with me, but I'm going to look at chapter 12 because I want to show you where the Passover comes from. Exodus 12 it is the first Passover. It shows when they are coming out of Egypt, when they're getting ready. They've been in bondage for 300 years, and God is preparing to bring them out. And I think most of us are familiar with this scripture, but I just want to read a few verses. Now, keep in mind, I'm going to show you what I'll tell you what I'm reading and skipping, because there's an awful lot of information here. Okay, so I'm only going to show you portions of it that ties into what we want to look at in Matthew, and it is my intentions anyway to come back at another time and look at this in greater detail. Okay, so Exodus 12. Starting the verse 1, I'm going to read the first 3 verses, then I'm going to skip to verse 11. Okay, it says, now the Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, this month shall be the beginning of the month for you. It is to be the first month of the year to you. Speak to all the congregation of Israel, saying, on the 10th of this month, they are each one to take a lamb for themselves according to their father's household, and a lamb for each household. Okay, so here they're getting ready for the Passover meal, and God is going to tell them how to choose a lamb, how to prepare that lamb, and when to kill the lamb. So this really kind of speaks to, if not all, most of the lessons we have had here lately. So it's a lot of information here, and I'm going to skip this so that we don't get bogged down, and we'll keep our thought as we move along to Matthew, okay? Now, and I'm going to pick up in verse 11, and I'm going to probably read down to 14, okay? Now you shall eat of it in this manner, with your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. But I will go through the land of Egypt on that night, and will strike down all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord. And the blood should be a sign for you on the houses where you live. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and no plague will befall you to destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt. Now this day will be a memorial to you, and you shall celebrate it with a feast, as a feast to the Lord. Throughout your generations, you are to celebrate it as a permanent ordinance. Now, this is the original Passover. This is what happens. They are preparing to leave Egypt, and this is the Passover that Jesus is preparing for now. So when you look at this and you see where he tells his disciples, those who may have read it already, he tells them to go and find this guy, this man, and tells him that the Lord is prepared for his Passover, to get the Passover ready. This is what he's referring to. So it is no coincidence that he dies, or this the crucifixion has to take place at this time, at this point, as it marks this memorial. Okay. Any questions about that as we go back to Matthew? Does this make sense to you?
Ron, I think I got lost when you when you finished reading 14 and you were saying he went in search of a man, and this is why the Passover.
No.
Yeah.
What I was trying to do was back to Matthew.
Okay.
I was that part I was tying back to Matthew when Jesus tells his disciples to go and prepare the Passover dinner, and that's what we're about to read right now. So yeah, that's the part of that I was going to read.
Okay.
Hold on, I'll even tell you where, and I'm sorry about that. I was talking too fast. If you look at 26 and 18,
Okay.
he says, and go into the city to a certain man and say unto him, the teacher says, my time is at hand. I am to keep the Passover at your house with my disciples. And the disciples did as Jesus directed them, and they prepared the Passover. So this is that's what I was just saying. This is no coincidence that this has to take place. This is part of that memorial, and as I said, this ties up all of our lessons. I thought about this when I thought about when we talked about the eighth sense and the importance of your memory and looking at your history and where you are and what it has brought you through, the good and the bad. And he says to you, this will be a memorial in generations. He tells them when he tells them how to prepare the lamb, he tells them that everybody is to do the same thing at the same time. So this is the assembling together. And if you can picture this as each individual doing his own assembling and following directions. So this is an internal, intuitive thing that is taking place, not only collectively externally, but collectively internally as well. So a lot is going on in here with this. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Now, as I said, the objective here is to look at Jesus and what he was going through and to tie that in not only to what Pastor did yesterday with the 4th chapter, but to also tie it into us. We struggle sometimes with our struggles, and we still, I think, have trouble or difficulty sometimes embracing those things, and they are very much necessary. And so as we look at this and try to gain some understanding of it, we can kind of place ourselves here and hopefully get some enlightenment from it. But a couple of things needed to be explained, and I'm going to look at verse 26 and ask Pastor to help me explain this. And please, anybody else, if you see something here or have questions, and we're not, again, going to go through this in detail, just kind of looking at it from the perspective of seeing what is taking place here and how it links to the Old Testament and moving forward, okay? How it takes us forward, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. Verse 26 says, and while they were eating, Jesus took some bread, and after a blessing, he broke it and gave it to his disciples and said, take, eat, this is my body. And when he had taken a cup and gave thanks, he gave it to them, saying, drink from it, all of you. That was the part, and that really, because another translation to me that I read says, drink from it, all of it. not all of you, but all of it. So that takes on a different meaning as will be explained to you in just a minute. For this is my blood of the covenant, which I pour out for many for forgiveness of sin. But I said to you, for I will not drink from this fruit of the vine from now until the day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. So this is again the Passover and the importance of that, and just kind of tying it in to what we've already read, and I want to ask Pastor to talk about the wine portion of this. What do you see here about the wine portion of this? Because I read something about this and about how many pours that they had to have. But can you explain this for us a little bit, Pastor, please?
Yes, I hope I can. First of all, before we get to the wine, I think it's important also to understand the significance of the bread, and that will help us see the sacredness of the wine as well. In the Middle East, especially during the period of Jesus, even Semites to this day see bread as being sacred, and because bread is seen as the basic food source that our Creator gave us to sustain our life. And that's why bread is used so frequently in the scriptures in relationship to our physical life itself. And in addition to that, the bread is so sacred in the Eastern setting until they don't use a fork or a knife to harm it. They actually they break the bread as opposed to using a utensil, and they see that as mistreating the bread itself. Because of its source, it must be respected for what it was given, from whom it was given. From whom it came, as well as to whom it was given. So the bread is speaking of the physical life in this earth. When Jesus says, "This is symbolic of my body, which is given for you. This is the bread of life," and I'll pull all that together in a few moments. Then, in addition to that, he talks about the wine. Well, let me finish it. The reason that bread is so mentioned so much in the scriptures because it speaks, in this particular case with Jesus, is tying the past to the present and the future, which means that it's bringing everything into a place of unicity outside of time itself. Jesus was bringing together the past of the breaking of bread when it was for the purpose of deliverance from a cramped space, from enslavement. And it became a part of the symbol of a new covenant. It was part of that symbol of a new covenant. And the new covenant, please understand this, it says New Testament. This New Testament is talking about those who will testify to something. In this particular case, it's speaking of those who will testify to what Jesus was teaching. Testifying does not have as much to do with you on the stand being a witness or testifying to something in church by standing up and let me testify how good the Lord been to me. it's not so much of that. What it actually is speaking to is you are embracing this to the extent that you would become a martyr for it. You give your life in order to have what Jesus is teaching. Does that make sense so far? Hello?
Yes, yes.
If it doesn't, please ask a question. If I'm confusing you, let's straighten it out, okay? Okay, now we go to the wine, to the cup and the wine. The wine speaks volumes about the essence of Jesus, the essence of what he was teaching, the essence of his spirituality. What happened in the Middle East is that when the friends were sitting around the table, or when they were having a feast, the wine was passed by the host. So what the host would do is fill a cup with wine and pass it to one of the guests. And when that guest received the cup, it was his responsibility or her responsibility. In this period, it was him, of course, to express to the whole group the wish for happiness and longevity for all at that table. And then that one who spoke happiness and longevity will single out someone out of the group and ask him to accept the next cup that is poured as a pledge of affection. In other words, accept the next cup as an expression of affection for what has been said in regards to those around the table. The pourer, the one who pours the wine, does what is asked of him, and he passes it to the one who had been singled out to drink from that cup. It is customary for the host, when their gathering ends, what the host does is pass a cup. Let me back up. The cup that's being passed in the beginning is the cup that all drink from. And that cup, you drink everything in that cup. That's why it says drink it all. That cup is filled by the host, and all the guests drink from that cup, but they drink from the fullness of that cup. And each time that one drinks, it's passed back to the host to refill it. However, when they come to the end of this gathering, the host will pass a cup, and the purpose of it is to seal the friendship, the unicity of that group. And this time, it's only one cup that's filled, and everyone takes a sip from that cup and passes it to the next one until all have drank from that cup, meaning that until all have received the fruit of the vine. Now, when Jesus talks about receiving the fruit of the vine, it is an expression that everyone receives what Jesus has imparted in them, his essence with that wine. Now, what we have done with communion has actually made a mockery of it, because when Jesus said these words, everyone at that table understood what he meant. when he said, "This is my body," when he said, "This is my blood," they understood what he meant. In that, they knew that he had lived a life of sacrifice. And what Jesus was saying is that everything that I have taught you is to sustain you, as does this bread. And when you do this, remember my essence, because this wine is the essence of who I am. And then Jesus says that he will not drink of it again, or the fruit of the vine, until all had drink, till he was seated with all of them. So what Jesus is saying and how they understood it culturally, what Jesus is saying is, you are to receive the life, your physical life being sustained from spirituality. Your essence is who I am, is everything that I am teaching. And you are to make sure that you pass it on to the next person, so everyone can have a sip from this cup. Everyone can partake of a piece of this bread, which means that communion does not give you the right to be a member of a church. Man did that. Jesus is saying that you are obligated when you embrace what I have taught, when you become what I have taught, you become the essence of who I am, and you are obligated to pass that on to others. Jesus is saying, I am not telling you that the bread physically and the wine physically are going to sustain you in any way. It's there to bring you to a place of remembrance of what all of this means. So to do communion the first Sunday or every other Sunday, however you do it, to do communion the way we have been doing it is ineffective. It is scripturally unsound, and it is totally disrespectful for the price that Jesus paid, and for us to be able to understand the reason he came into this earth. If we are to respect the scriptures as we say we do, then we must respect the wishes of Jesus when he did this thing we call communion. He did it for us to understand who he is and for us to become who he is. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, that's crystal clear. Yeah. I especially like the essence part of it, though.
COVID made us do this. COVID, the one thing that people missed, that they wanted more, how we go get communion. Well, if you don't understand what this means, your receiving communion means nothing at all. COVID separated us to push us to a place to understand the spiritual nature of what's written on the pages, the spiritual nature of what Jesus taught and who Jesus is, the spiritual nature of who we are and what we are responsible for when we embrace that we are Elohim. Does that make sense? And I'm sorry to cut you off, Ron.
No, you did not. I like that. No, you just the tying together the you talk about the essence of the spiritual part of who he is, and along with the physical, the bread and the wine, the blood, and just kind of ties it all in with what was said in the Old Testament. I'm just kind of playing it all out, seeing all of this, but it puts it in perspective. It's totally different than what we've been taught.
Thank you, sir. The Old Testament was the way they did it in the Old Testament. This had more to do with men who were enslaved to their desires, enslaved to what they saw with their eyes rather than with their eye. And this was a precursor to the teachings of Jesus. What I mean by that is this: there will come a time when you will understand that the blood of the sheep is simple or symbol of the essence of who you are and what you will receive. Your obedience to this at this moment is the source of your deliverance. And if you do it, you will pass from death, which is not understanding who you are. You will pass from your selfish desires to a life that you have known nothing about. And when Jesus came into this earth, Jesus came to explain that in spiritual terms, and that he did. But explain it and yet at the same time hide it from the minds of those who are only searching for the scriptures to manipulate, condemn, and control. And the journey that we are on has granted us the sight of the eye, to see the essence, to see the spiritual strength and power that's interwoven into this thing that we have called communion. In the sense of Eastern Communion is about you coming together, yes, but it's more than that. It's about you being together, whether you're physically in the same place or not. Therefore, we get that portion that says, I will not drink it again until I sit at the table with you, or at my Father's table in the kingdom. I just remember exactly what it says. But this is what he's saying. Every time we are living according to and seeking to understand the righteous pathway that we have chosen, we are drinking from that cup. Every time we meet to teach someone and open their eyes so they can see beyond what we have been given and see what we were supposed to have been given. Every time that happens, we are not only sustaining the body, but we are also delivering the essence of who we are. The essence of Jesus was no different than the essence of our being. Jesus was just as much Elohim as we are. And that is the reason Jesus said, I and Avun are one. We are the same. There is no difference between Avun and me. And if that is the case, then there is no difference between Yahweh and Elohim. And therefore, all the attributes of Yahweh Elohim are our attributes also. The translation of Yahweh, one of the most prominent translations is self-existing one. However, it also speaks to deliverance. It speaks to all of the attributes of womb, and the Elohim portion of womb speaks to creativity, bringing things into existence. When we learn who we are as Elohim, then we become the self-existing one also. If you read Genesis in the creation, you will see where Elohim said, Elohim said, Elohim said. But when you get to that second chapter, it says Yahweh Elohim created this man. the second chapter of Genesis, the 7th verse. That's when all of this it comes into play. And when we see that, we see attributes as opposed to seeing a man who created men. We see attribute. We are the attributes of womb. And Jesus said that if you forget who you are, if you forget that you are the essence of who I am, you are the essence of a wound, and you a wound are one. If you forget that, then do this in order to remember it. Do this physical thing to lead you back to the spiritual reality of who you are. As often as it takes for you to remain cognizant of who you are, do this. It doesn't matter if you have to do it physically or whether you have to remind yourself by understanding what all of this means. The point is, know who you are. And every attribute that you see in the scriptures are who you are. If that was not the case, then Jesus could not have said that I and a womb are one. Jesus could not have said, not only will you do what I've done, but greater things than these you shall do. Jesus said these things because Jesus is telling us that we are as he is, not as he was, but as he is. The only portion of Jesus that left this earth was his body. That's it. But his essence remained. And we are the recipients of his essence, not because we were not prior to our search. We have become aware of being that essence. And it's our obligation to make sure that religion does not usurp the authority and the power of what Jesus is saying, and keep people in a state of weakness, keep them in a state of wickedness, keep them in a state of groveling and begging, keep them in a state of servitude, keep them in a state of being manipulated and controlled. This is about freedom. And I'm not talking about freedom from what men do. I'm talking about freedom to know who you are. Because when you know who you are, no one can enslave you. Nothing can stop you. Obstacles are there for your soul to lift weights, to get stronger. They're not there to stop you. There's no wall that you cannot penetrate. Jesus, in his resurrection, walked through the walls. There is nothing that you cannot attain for the benefit of humanity. There's absolutely nothing beyond you other than what you think is beyond you. There are no limits to your power, your essence, your being. There are no limits to them unless you place limits on them. The Dogon was able to know about Sirius 2. Why? Because they had no limitations. They saw everything. And we are privy to the same essence. The question is, are we willing to get off the bed of pity and stop asking why me, and stop complaining about what we're dealing with, and realize that everything that we deal with, rather than being a complaint, let's embrace it as an opportunity to learn even more, to travel further on this journey, to embrace a greater essence than we've ever known before, and to see what the Creator has in store for us, because our minds cannot conceive it, but our souls can receive it. Thank you. Unless there are questions or comments.
Yeah, I have a question for you. One of the things that does say in the Old Testament, I think is important, is that the year started over. When this takes place, he reminds them that from this starts your year anew. This is the first day of the year. So tie that in, the importance of being refreshed or going back to the beginning of the year.
When this is done physically, because you're making an effort to move from the physical into the spiritual in order to attain the understanding and to embrace the reality of who you are. When this is done from the physical, it's talking about it's starting a new life. You're on a new journey. When the scripture talks about a new year, it talks about a new phase in your life. And that word phase is a poor choice, but it's best I can do at the moment. It's talking about a new phase in your life that leads you beyond where you are at that moment. If you do not have to remember or be reminded, if you are totally in sync with the reality of who you are without having to make excuses or be reminded of that, you just do what you do. There are no new years to be started in your life because the year never ends for you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
If there are questions, please raise them.
You say the end. You say the end never ends for us. Say that again.
I said that your year never ends. You don't need a year of Jubilee. You are Jubilee itself. You don't need to be reminded of the essence of who you are. So you don't need a new year to start over every time you do that, because you are not doing that anymore to remember. You know who you are. Nobody has to remind you that your name is Ron. Nobody has to remind you that your name is Audra Bob. Nobody has to remind you what your name is. So what I'm saying is nobody should have to, oh my God. What I'm saying in essence is Tamara does not have to look in a mirror and say, I'm Tamara. She already knows that. All she has to do is find out who Tamara is. And once she does that and holds on to that, she never have to remind herself ever again, because she know who Tamara is. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
If you're a Christian, you got to remind yourself of what Jesus did as opposed to what Jesus did for you. What Jesus taught you. The essence of his presence in your life. When you are spiritual, you don't have to do that, because that is not what this is talking about. And I say what I say because every single one of us on this phone started this journey with communion. I remember first and third Sunday at the first church I pastored and moved it to the first Sunday so everybody could come to church every Sunday. I remember that. My journey started at the same place as your journey, taking communion. It doesn't matter whether you're a Methodist, a Catholic, a Presbyterian, a Baptist, it doesn't matter. Every one of us have gone through this stage of taking communion rather than being it. And all of it started because the Pope said, you got to take communion. The Pope put that out there. And Martin Luther broke with the Catholic Church, and he gave us a different meaning of the ingestion of the bread and the wine than did the Catholics. One said that the bread becomes his body alive once the priest prays over it. And that's consubstantiation. Transubstantiation is when you eat and drink, and once you eat it, it becomes alive and it becomes the blood of Jesus once you ingest it. That's Martin Luther. All of us have done one form of this or another. All of us have. So why am I emphasizing this? If all of us had to start at this place of physicality, of misunderstanding, and to get to where we are now, why would we condemn or look down on anyone who is still doing it because they don't know?
Mm-hmm.
It is not for us to pity them. It's for us to love them for the efforts they're putting forth. And I'm not talking about anybody in the pulpit. I'm not. Because if you are in that pulpit, your responsibility is to learn the truth about what you teach or suffer the consequences for not caring what you teach. So I'm not talking about the leadership. I'm talking about those in the pews. I'm talking about the sheep, not the hireling. A hireling is not only one who doesn't take care of the sheep in a physical way. A hireling is also one who teaches anything except the truth, who put poison in the bread, who allow the sheep to eat from poison, from poison vegetation, allows them to drink from dirty water. And all of that comes from being unwilling to do what it takes to simply understand. And this has nothing to do with how smart you are, whether or not you have gone to a seminary. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is whether or not you have the desire. And if the desire is there, the picture will be painted for you. Questions or comments? God, I hope I'm clear.
You are. I guess one of the things I was thinking about is the Old Testament. This is written so those memorials, especially this one, I guess, is written until someone comes and puts this, stamp this on their heart, and not because the remembering to do this yearly speaks of an immaturity and not an understanding. It has to be a ritual so you can keep it in the earth until one comes along and gives it understanding and gives voice to that understanding and puts it out there in the atmosphere. So
Thank you.
just an observation. I mean, it's because the Old Testament is full of memorials, and they have served their purpose, I suppose, up until this point.
They have. The question becomes, who are you? When you say that, when we talk about being the essence of Jesus, when we talk about doing the things that Jesus did, we followed a ritual of opening blind eyes, of bringing healing to the body. All of that we've done before. I mean, literally done before. However, when we began to understand that every physical thing that Jesus did, from opening blinded eyes, from healing the woman with the issue of blood, delivering the woman from being stoned, talking to the woman at the well, all of these things were there to point us to a spiritual reality. The woman at the well was there to get water. The woman at the well was telling us something. When Jesus spoke with her, he was talking about something. Spirituality is birthed into this earth through the womb of a woman. She fetched the water. She went in the heat of the day because she did not want to be ridiculed. And what is actually saying is that it doesn't matter what you've done in your life. What matters is whether or not you accept the teachings. It does not matter what you have done. And it doesn't even matter what you might do. What matters is knowing who you are. You are a deliverer if you're the essence of Jesus. Yeshua, Yahweh who delivers. That's who you are if you're that essence. And deliverance does not mean that you deliver people against their will. Deliverance can only come to those who desire deliverance, who have a heart that's open to understand what's being said, as opposed to having ears that only want to hear what is always heard, so it can shout and run up and down some aisles. Also, it can make people feel good, so you can get an increase in salary. It's not about that. It's about the essence. It's about the spiritual reality of living in this earth. The spiritual reality of living in this earth is not about you. It's about humanity. Look at Moses. Look at Joshua. Look at Jesus. Look at David. Their lives was geared toward humanity. Moses could have left Egypt and not gone back. Moses did not have to accept that responsibility. But the Creator is saying, when you accept the reality of who you are, there's a burning fire in you. It's a blaze. It's all consuming. And if you be still long enough to experience this fire, this burning bush is burning up your desires, your selfish desires, so that you can become open to the deliverance of a multitude. So you can become open to draw out of them all of those erroneous things that they have been taught, and all of those selfish things that they have been engaged in, and all those that condemning, and free from that condemning tongue that you have. What other people do is their business. What you do is for them and everyone else. I do not believe that we have the obligation to single people out in order for us to deliver them. Our deliverance is about humanity. It's about delivering humanity from everything, from being blind, from life being drained from them, from ridiculing people because of their past, when they are searching for themselves and don't even know it. The woman at the well was searching for herself, and she saw herself when she was open to the voice, the words, the teachings, the principles that were given to her by Yeshua. Our responsibility is to not just teach, but be what we teach. Be the teacher. And this has nothing to do with that checklist. Do you drink? Do you dance? Do you do this? It has nothing to do with that at all. Living this means that you do what Jesus did. That means you teach. The church has put us in a box. And everything that we do, that we enjoy, we have to sneak and do it. Just like we can sneak behind God's back and do something. We put more power in the hands of the church than we do in our Creator. We are afraid of the people around us condemning us more so than we are of what the Creator is saying to us. Hear me and hear me well. Until you get to a place where you are comfortable with you, until you get to a place where you're comfortable in who you are and understanding that you are Elohim, then, until then, you will always be afraid of what people say. I remember distinctively the things that I was teaching and teach. My family don't embrace them for the most part. It's okay with me. I still interact with them. I'm not above them. So there's all this crazy stuff about separating from the world so you could be like Jesus. That's crazy. Jesus lived in the midst of everybody. He didn't wait till Sunday to go to church to say that we were the righteous. No. Jesus was in the midst of everyone. I'm not afraid of what the people at the church may say to me. I remember, and some of you on this phone will remember this, I was teaching in Gaffney, and one evening before my class started, no, it had ended, that's what it was, and we were standing outside talking, and this minister says to me, asked me a question, because we were talking about wine, and she went to them wanting to see her buying wine in the store, and blah, 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 blah. And I said, why? And I don't want anybody to think that I'm drinking wine. Well, I drink, I said to her, and I'm teaching you. So if God is upset with me drinking, why is it that you come to me to be taught? And what I am teaching you, you know it to be the truth. That was the end of that conversation. What am I saying to you? At some point, you have to make a decision whether you're going to serve that God on the banks of Christianity, or whether you're going to serve that God on the other side of the river, which is Christianity and all the other religious stuff, or are you going to serve the God of our creation? Are you going to serve a woman? Are you going to be the minister in the earth for those who need you? Because if everybody at the church has been baptized, saved by the Holy Ghost, is on their way to heaven anyhow, why are you fooling with them? They don't need you. If you don't see anybody ambulance picking up people to take to the hospital who are not sick, who has nothing wrong with them. I hope this is making sense to you, because we are in a very precarious place now. I'm going to say something to you. You cannot be the essence of Jesus without being Jesus. And you can't be Jesus without being Elohim. And you can't be Elohim without being Yahweh. Because Yahweh Elohim created you. So if you are not doing what Jesus did, check yourself. Check yourself. Jesus didn't go to the church. The church put him out. My God, the church put us out. The choice is yours. We are in a precarious place. We must have all the energy of commitment possible for us to carry out the mission that we have been given. And that is harmony. Harmony. Harmony is a thing that is unseen, yet it has the power to change animalistic attitudes into attitudes of humanism. In other words, harmony brings about the true human. And the true human is just like Jesus is. And please get away from those religious things that you've been told that Jesus is, because Jesus is everything except that. I think I'm done.
Thank you.
Pastor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, okay. Can you repeat what you said a few minutes ago, that you can't be Elohim? I'm sorry, you can't be the essence of Jesus without Elohim, being Elohim, and you can't be Elohim without being Yahweh. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's what I said. Let me explain that.
Okay, thank you.
You get baptized, they tell you you live a life like Jesus. You cannot do that if you don't know who Jesus is. And if you are going to embrace what Jesus said, that you can do the same thing that I do, you can't do that without being who Jesus, the essence of who Jesus is. The question becomes, what is the essence of Jesus? The essence of Jesus is no different than the essence of Elohim. And the essence of Elohim is intertwined with Yahweh. Because when we look at Genesis 2 and 7, it says that Yahweh Elohim took dust from the earth.
Pastor,
Yes?
hey, Vermel says she dropped you. She's recording, so she dropped you.
Okay. Did anybody else drop me?
No, I heard you.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I hear.
It may be a glitch with the.
I heard. I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you.
It may very well be that everybody wasn't supposed to hear this anyway. Because quite frankly, I'm serious. Because quite frankly, I'm talking to you. I'm not, at this moment, I'm not imploring humanity to do anything. I'm imploring you to do everything so humanity can become who it's supposed to be. So just maybe they were not supposed, I'm good with that. I'm good with that. What I am expressing to you is what I'm experiencing right now. We are at a pivotal moment for humankind. Teresa, does that help you?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Any other questions or comments?
Oh, Pastor, so what the thing that Jesus was doing and teaching us how to be spiritual human?
No, he was teaching us how to be human, because when we are human, we are spiritual.
Okay, it's the other way
See,
around.
Right. This is the thing, Charles. If we embrace who we are spiritually, that gives us the know-how to be humane, meaning that we know how to treat each other. Now, if you don't know how to treat each other, you have an animalistic attitude. That doesn't mean you're not spiritual. You have made a choice to be dysfunctional in this earth realm as opposed to being functional. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Thank you for putting that out there.
You're welcome, sir. Anyone else?
Okay.
Go ahead, Ron.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Pat.
I'm
Sure, go ahead.
done. I'm done. I just go ask for questions.
All I was going to say is this started off looking at the person of who Jesus is, the human, and the different aspects of that. What you have given us this evening, I don't know if we want to look at verse 38 right now. What's your opinion? Do you want to continue with that? That kind of looks at a different something other than
Matthew
something
38.
different. Yeah, Matthew 26 and 38. Excuse me.
Matthew 26 and 38.
Yeah, it's just a continuation on to what we've talked about, but it takes him into the garden, which looks at another aspect of who he is.
I have no qualms with that if they want to go.
You guys okay? It's 7:13. You want to go into this?
I'm fine, yeah.
I'm
Okay.
good with it, Ron. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So if we can pick this up, then he's going into the garden, and he's taking Peter, James, and John with him. And I'm pick up at 37. And he took them with him, Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, and began to be grieved and distressed. Then he said to them, "My soul is deeply grieved to the point of death. Remain here and keep watch with me." Now, looking at what you have described to us and shown us, starting from the Old Testament and connecting all of this with his wisdom, all that walking forward, and seeing what was written in the Old Testament, that memorial, what this truly means. Now he takes a turn here. So can you pick it up there and show us other side of his, or another aspect of his humanity? Please, sir.
Yeah, this aspect of his humanity is no different than ours. This tells us beyond anything else that with all the power, with all the wisdom that Jesus had, he was also frail. There were times when he needed to refuel himself. When he took them with him, looking at their names will give us a better picture of why he took them and his relationship with them. Peter speaks of strength. James speaks of, honor, or desire to attain honor, because he's a supplanter. And John speaks of the beloved, one who is gentle, one whose emotions are always present. So Jesus went to this place to meditate, to gain the strength to not only endure what was going to happen to him at the hands of the Romans, but also to endure death itself, to let us know that no matter how strong you are, no matter how you embrace who you are, there is still that physical desire to stay in this body. And that cup of exiting this body exposes the fragility in every human at some point. And in doing so, Jesus said, no differently than what was said to Jesus when Jesus was on that mountain, when Jesus was in that desert place, and the angels ministered to him, means that it is the word, it is the message that he received from his creator when he was challenging himself, that sustained him and that strengthened him. And when he speaks, if it's your desire Let this cup of pain and suffering be removed from me. All he's saying is this: I can't sustain myself without your words, without your messages to me, without me understanding who you are and holding on to that. And even with that, it's difficult. But I know that you can pull me through this. I know what you brought me into this earth for. I know my responsibility. I've done all I was assigned to do, except this one thing. I need the strength to die to myself, to die to this physical world, so that I can be an eternal presence with those who will come after me. Does that make sense? Ron?
It resonates.
Yeah, just thank you.
What Jesus is doing to us now is sharing the attributes of a spiritual personality. It's introducing us to the things, the challenges that we must face beyond what we've already faced, and telling us that in spite of where you are on this journey, there will be times when you experience fragility. Know this. Meditate on what you know, and that word will sustain you. The message that the Creator has embedded in us will rise up from our soul and soothe our mind so that our emotions won't push us to remove ourselves from a journey that we know we're supposed to be on. It's not a weakness to be expressive of fragility. The reason we see it as a weakness is because we are ignorant of the truth. Even a fragile person is stronger than anyone who refuses to take this journey to truth. Our strength is not in our muscles. Our strength is in what truth is to us. Our power will deliver us from the moment that the burden is so heavy until we think we can't carry it any longer. It's what's in us. We are built for burdens. When Jesus said, cast our burdens on him, what Jesus was not talking about, climb on my back. Jesus was saying, rely on what I'm teaching. The principles, the essence of my being. No matter what you face, stay the journey. There is nothing to go back to because you have seen that the truth was not taught to you. It is not a condemnation of those of our forefathers. They did what they thought the truth to be. To this day, it's a different story. The leadership today is far different than ancestral leadership was. Our ancestral leadership believed in the scriptures more than the ones who taught them the scriptures. When our leadership started going to seminaries, they actually went to a cemetery because they died while they were there. They came back with no life, and some went with no life and came back with even less than that. How can someone who doesn't know the truth introduce you to it? How can someone who does not care about the scriptures other than what it brings to them personally teach you what truth is? They can teach you the philosophy that surrounds the book, but they can't teach you the book. We are special people. And I mean that. Special doesn't mean you're better than anybody. Special means that you've been chosen for a reason. The 1619 Project hit it on the head. We are the nation that was born on the waters. And because we are that nation that's born on the waters, no one other than us can bring healing to the land. No one other than us can bring balance to the land. No one, would you please mute your phones? No one has endured more than we have. We had to endure what we did in order to become the spiritual nation that we are. We are a nation unto ourselves because we were birthed on the waters. That means, please mute your phones. It's a distraction for everyone who's trying to listen. Please honor them. We were birthed on the waters for a reason. We did not lose our spiritual essence, our spiritual reality. It was beaten into something that didn't look like spiritual reality anymore. It was beaten into something called religion, something called Christianity. But we're on a mission. And that mission is to bring deliverance. We are the nation of deliverance that was brought across the waters for the purpose of teaching the children who knew nothing about spirituality to how they are to be in this earth so that this earth can be free to walk in righteousness. That is the reason we are so quick to forgive no matter what happens to us, because we are the essence that was brought across the waters in chains, out of the womb of Africa, out of the womb of Africa, placed on the ship of destined destruction from the waters that brought us here. We rode on the waters, on the amniotic fluids of our birth. Being battered and bruised, we are who we are because of what our mission is. There will be no sanity in this earth. There will be no harmony in this earth. There will be no peace. There will be nothing that resembles who we were created to be if we don't take upon ourselves the responsibility to carry out the mission that we were sent to carry out. When we do what we were supposed to do, and we are doing that now. Not only does America see the light, but the whole world does. Because when America catches a cold, the world catches pneumonia. So when righteousness prevails in this place that we've been brought to, it will spill into the places where others of us were carried. It's a reason that we didn't stop at that island There's a reason that we were dumped off in Europe. There's a reason for that. Our Creator knew that the superpower of manipulation, of racism, of everything else would be this nation. And in the midst of this nation were delivered those who will deliver the enslavers. It is the slave. It is the mentality of Africa being enslaved that would bring us to a place of the mentality of our power to deliver. Ever since we've been in this country, we've sought ways to bring deliverance. None of them have worked because none of them have been based upon the essence of who we are. I hope you understand this. We have to be real with our mission, our purpose. We have to hold on to the power of every word that flows from Elohim, not from our minds, not from our adversarial thoughts, but from Elohim. Our adversarial thoughts are also thoughts that think that we can be delivered through governmental agencies. Humanity is to be delivered, not just the African. We are here to deliver humanity in a spiritual way. I'm done, unless there are questions. Ron?
Pastor Richard, this is Valerie. I have a question. Pastor Richard, do you think that we had to go through all of that in order for us to get to where we are today? You know, the religious stuff that we went through?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
You know, let me tell you something. If we had not been taught religion, those who taught us religion would have destroyed all the holy books and wrote their own. They saw just enough in that book to use it for manipulation. And that's what sustained the word. Because if you study history, you find that the book burners were always Europeans. But when they saw religious words or religious antics that they could use, what did they do? They got rid of the book of Thomas. They got rid of the book of Mary. They kept the ones that they could manipulate. And that's what kept everything intact. So that when there was a generation who were willing to rise up and say the truth, not only about history, but about religion itself, speak the truth about it. It is that point that the generation whose ancestry is tied directly to the souls that were birthed on the waters. Does that make sense, Val?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
I also think not just slavery, but the African before slavery, all of that energy is with us. I mean, all of this, everything was necessary. The energy that we ride on now, even you know, the stuff that even sustains religion, because there's some in religion who have a real heavy heart that try to understand truth, and they're riding it out. So they believe that they're at the right place. So all of that energy has been in the earth for a very long time.
And
And
Ron, you're absolutely right. I talk so fast sometimes I miss stuff. It's the ancestral energy that gave us the strength to become the nation that we are. Do you understand what I mean?
yes,
And I'm not talking about the ancestors who died in this land or died on the waters. I'm talking about the ancestral strength and power, the ancestral wisdom that brought us to where we are. It gave us the strength to make that voyage under all of those adverse circumstances.
okay. Anyone else questions and or comments? A lot has been said this evening. If there's anything that you have questions about, please by all means we'll make time to talk about this again whenever we can reconvene, which will be we will be here Saturday. Yeah, be here Saturday. Pastor, you want to speak to that any about the next week and the week prior to the 12th? You just in case someone missed it the other day.
Okay, on the 6th, which is Sunday, on the 5th, we will be on Zoom, on the phones, etc. As usual. On the 6th, which is Sunday, we will be at Great New Faith. We are coming together physically because we haven't seen each other in almost 3 years. And on the 12th, we will do the same thing at Foundation. So we won't be on the 12th, that Saturday, but we will be on the 13th, which is that Sunday.
Okay.
Now, maybe you might have to do what I did. I had to make a note of all that so I could keep it straight.
Any questions about it? Yeah.
Go ahead, Ron.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to give them room if anybody had a question. But okay. So I hope everybody's clear about that. If not, give us a call or give us a text or something. And I think tonight was a very, very good night, and a lot has been said. So encourage you to listen to the CD and look forward to seeing you. Hope you have an awesome week. Oh, and something else on the heels of what was said tonight. This is an election year. You're hearing a lot of stuff, and regardless of what happens, again, remember who we are. Just remember who we are. That stuff does not control who we are and the mission that we're ahead. Yes, sir.
That's what I'm talking about earlier. We should not have to say what you're saying.
Okay.
We are at a pivotal point, and the energy of positivity, the spirituality, the truth that we seek is who we are. Hold on to that because it is needed now more than ever before. That's what I'm talking about. We should know who we are at all times without having to have communion. Make sense, Ron?
Yes, sir. Makes sense. All right. If there are no more questions or comments, I hope everybody have an awesome week and look forward to Saturday. Thank you.
Good teaching you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody, goodbye.